Good evening. Good evening. The workshop meeting of the Tomball ISD Board of Trustees here Monday, April 14th, 2025 is called to order at 5:31 Central Time. For the record, a quorum of the board is present. All trustees are in attendance tonight, with the exception of Mr. McStravick, who's tending to family activities. This meeting is being recorded in accordance with Government Code Section 551.128. The main purpose of tonight's meeting is to receive reports from the administration and review the business agenda for Tuesday night's regular meeting. That's tomorrow night. Any action regarding items on the business agenda will be taken at Tuesday's meeting, tomorrow night. This is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that is open to the public. And I'll say this, we're super excited to see all these wonderful students, and so excited that the parents and guardians and like are here to support as well. Public participation is limited to designated times during the meeting for citizen comment for those that have registered to speak in accordance with board procedures. We ask for your cooperation in ensuring the meeting runs in an orderly manner. I will now, with great enthusiasm, turn the floor over to our superintendent, Dr. Martha Salazar de Zamora, superintendent of schools, to proceed with recommendations.
Well, thank you so much. I like that enthusiasm. Yeah. Thank you, President Dr. Pratt, members of the board, those of you in the audience today. It is always exciting to begin our meetings with recognitions. Before we get into recognitions of our many different student groups, we do have one very important meet the staff. I would like to invite Holly Searcy to please come up. This is an opportunity for a new administrator to bring greetings and introduce herself to the community. We are so excited, Holly, to have you here in Tomball ISD, and I'd love for the rest of the board and our community to learn a little bit more about you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Holly, and thank you, Sarah, for bringing your family to Tomball. More can come. We have openings. Very excited about that. I love Meet the Staff because it's an opportunity for you to really share a little bit about your story and what brought you to our destination district. So congratulations again. Now we'd like to move on to the National Merit Scholars. Dr. Mindy Munoz, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Schools, will lead this discussion.
Okay.
Dr. Zebo.
Can you hear?
I wanted to recognize Mr. Justin Unser, former school board member. He's in attendance tonight. So thank you for being here, Justin.
Okay, good evening. Can you hear me? No. Okay, I'm going to get, oh, thank you. Okay, good evening. President Dr. Pratt, Dr. Salazar Zamora, members of the board, cabinet, and all the amazing guests in the audience. I stand before you tonight with pride to recognize a group of students who have achieved a remarkable distinction. We are here to celebrate our National Merit finalists. The National Merit Scholarship Program is a highly esteemed academic competition that recognizes the top students in the United States. Students qualify by scoring in the top 1% on the PSAT, National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. These students represent some of the best of Tomball ISD, and their achievements reflect the dedication and support of our outstanding teachers, administrators, counselors, and the unwavering support of their families. We are incredibly proud of their accomplishments and the bright futures that lie ahead of them. I now ask Principal Chris Scott to present the Tomball High School finalists.
Good evening, President Pratt, Dr. Zamora, members of the board. Happy to be here with you guys. Tonight we have two representatives from the Pride of Texas to honor tonight as National Merit finalists. Charles, come on out for us. This is Charles Hadzik. Charles is a senior about to attend Texas A&M University and study engineering, so we're excited about that. Charles, not only in terms of being a great scholar, obviously high PSAT score, but earned a 1550 on his SAT score. And even more impressive, honestly, than the academics is his leadership. He was selected as the Hugh O'Brien nominee for THS to attend the Gulf Coast Conference. He also was Lone Star College high school leadership as well. And so, and I've seen that because I've known Charles way before I got to the high school. We go to church or have gone to church together before, and so I've seen that. He's volunteered at many opportunities at church, but also in the community in various other ways. And so again, in addition to being an outstanding academician, he is an excellent representative of our school and his family and our community. And in fact, we have his family here. So if they would stand real quick so we can recognize them as well. So mom and brothers there. And again, Charles comes from a family of high expectations, and I'm so happy you could be here tonight. Unable to be here with us tonight also is Ben Prince, but you're not unfamiliar with Ben. Ben was here as a state recognition for musicianship. He's in a choir, so you've met Ben before. He also just did a personal record for pole vault at the area track meet, so he will probably be coming back up here at some point later. But Ben was unable to be with us here tonight, but again is a great representative of THS. Ben is attending University of Texas and studying aerospace engineering. So again, our two representatives from Tomball High School, please help me congratulate them.
Congratulations, Tomball High School. And now Principal Jennifer Collier presenting the Merit Scholars for Tomball Memorial High School.
Good evening, Dr. Pratt, Dr. Zamora, members of the board, cabinet, and all our esteemed guests. We're excited to have 4 National Merit Scholars that are representing Tomball Memorial High School today. So I'm going to call them out individually. First is Leighton Bammel. Come on up, Leighton. Leighton is a member of our track and cross country team and has run for them all 4 years. He was an A+ student in his freshman and junior years, and I'm pretty sure might have been, you can't be recognized multiple times, or Leighton probably would have been up there. He has held the school record for the distance medley relay. His part was to compete in a 1,200 meter sprint. So his name is on our wall with a record, and his team made it to regionals this year in cross country. Next year, he will attend Baylor and major in data science, and he hopes one day to work in analytics. So congratulations, Leighton. And his family is here, over here, if you guys want to stand up and be recognized. We've got lots more Bammels coming through, and we're excited about that. Also, we have Jessica Ho. Jessica is also the TMHS valedictorian, so very exciting. Jessica has excelled on the UIL spelling team. She qualified for regionals, which led her to leading her team to that honor. She is a founding member of our UNICEF team on campus. She helped found this her sophomore year, and they raised quite a few books recently to donate, so we were so proud of her. She also founded a small tutoring business with a couple of friends. She does everything from marketing to communications when she's doing this tutoring. She also works with her family on their nonprofit organization, the Vietnamese Orphan Relief. So she's a very impressive young lady. Next year, she'll be attending Johns Hopkins University and studying biomedical engineering. So congratulations, Jessica. And her family is over here proudly videotaping. Congratulations, Mom and Dad, if you want to stand up. We're so proud of Jessica. Next, we have Luca Gasparini. Where's Luca? Someone back here. And our next 2 are also members of the symphony at Tomball Memorial High School, who has a concert tonight. So they want me to move quickly while we celebrate them, but we're super excited for that concert. Luca has made the all-region band for 3 years at Tomball Memorial High School. He has been an A+ student for 2 years, and he did play bass. There was a small basketball stint while he was at Tomball Memorial as well. He is the trombone section leader, a wind symphony member, a symphony orchestra member, a jazz ensemble member, and an all-area musician. And next year, he plans to attend Texas A&M and study computer engineering. He one day hopes to be a hardware engineer. So, Luca Gasparini, congratulations. And I know his mom and family are here in the audience, and Mom is actually a teacher at Tomball Memorial High School, which is very exciting. Mom, family, stand up for a second. And last but not least, we have Lauren Taylor. Where's Lauren? There she is. Come on up here, Lauren. So Lauren is a 4-year Roaring Blue Band member, and she's also one of our section leaders. She leads the trumpet section of our Roaring Blue Band and has had the honor of going to state marching contests all 4 years while a member of that band. She is also a member of our Wind Symphony and our Symphony Orchestra. Next year, Lauren plans to attend Colorado State and major in wildlife biology. So congratulations, Lauren. Family that's here, if you'll wave or stand. I know we're running out of room. There you go. Congratulations. Congratulations to all 4 of these young ladies and gentlemen. They work very hard, and we're so proud of them at Tomball Memorial.
Congratulations.
Thank you again, and congratulations to all of our National Merit Scholars. We are very proud of you. Moving on, we have Battle of the Books winners. I love Battle of the Books and always look forward to this event. Lauren Thompson, our Director of ELA, Social Studies, and Academic Intervention, will lead us in the recognition.
Thank you. Dr. Zamora, President Dr. Pratt, members of the board, cabinet, and guests, I am excited to celebrate the incredible achievements of our Battle of the Books elementary and secondary teams. It was another wonderful competition this year filled with passion, knowledge, and a true love of reading. First, I want to express my deepest appreciation to our library services team and Allison Reed, our coordinator of library services. This annual event highlights our students at each school who express a love for both competition and academics. Every single student who participated has shown us the power of teamwork, dedication, and the joy of diving into the world of books. They've tackled challenging questions and proven that reading can be both exciting and competitive. Tonight, we're going to celebrate each level of team winners and champions. So we're going to start with our third place teams. When I call your team and your coach, if you could come to the front, and I have taken the advisement of Ms. Suarez on how we can manage our large group, so I appreciate your patience. First, in third place, with an exceptional display of literary knowledge, we congratulate Timber Creek and their librarian coach, Stacy Hastings, at the elementary level, and Oakcrest Intermediate and their librarian coach, Deborah Russell, at the secondary level. All right. Our second place teams demonstrating remarkable depth of understanding of the books. We want to congratulate Creekview Elementary and their librarian coach, Kenzie Fredericks, and Willowwood Junior High and their librarian, Jamie Ridley, at the secondary level. And how blessed are we in Tomball ISD to have so many students who love reading that we can celebrate tonight. Our first place champions, Battle of the Books. We congratulate Creekside Forest and their librarian coach, Gresham Hawk. And Creekside Park Junior High and their librarian coach, Jillian Walker. These are our 25 Battle of the Books champions. Okay, she's gonna have.
right, I'll see what I can do.
Thank you again to all of our Battle of the Books winners. I love Battle of the Books. And we love highlighting every student that has been successful in that program. We're going to allow our guests to start to trickle out. Now there's plenty of seating. If you'd like to backfill, please, families, find a seat if you'd like. We'd like to move on to Destination Imagination, the Lone Star Finals. Dr. Ashley Schlafly, our Director of ELA and Advanced Academics, will lead this presentation. Dr. Schlafly.
Good evening, Dr. Salazar-Zamora, President Dr. Pratt, Board of Trustees, and members of our TISD cabinet. I am so excited to be here tonight to honor two of our teams that placed at our State Destination Imagination Lone Star Finals. So if we can invite everybody up. And while they're walking up, I'm just going to tell you a little bit about DI. Destination Imagination, or DI, it's an international program that is really neat because it allows students to be in the driving seat of everything that is happening in the competition. It is creative problem solving in the STEM fields, as well as fine arts and service learning. And for students to participate, they join a team of other students to solve an original or open-ended problem or challenge. And then they present that solution to that challenge on the various levels of the tournament. And here today, we have those that were successful at the state level. So I want to first recognize our inaugural team from West Elementary who competed in our technical challenge and placed 5th. We have Coach Bailey Andrews, Darren E. Deck, Elizabeth McKinnon, Valerie Burley, Elijah Daly, James Darty, Eric Gallion, and Lila Dillo. Additionally, we have our DI team who competed in our improv challenge from Lakewood Elementary, who came in 4th at the Lone Star Finals. They were coached by Stephanie Kelly. And the students on this team include Kylie Moore, Ellen Chapman, Sloan Bearden, William Wood, Emily Rust, Lily Reno, and Brady Bush. And I'd also be remiss to not recognize tonight our district UIL coordinator, who is Miss Samantha Wilson, who I believe is in the room with us. She's waving from the back. We could not do any of this without Samantha, and her job is to keep us all sane and to coordinate things at all of our campuses, both at the elementary and intermediate level. And so we're very grateful for you, Sam, as well. But tonight, please join me in recognizing our amazing teams from Destination Imagination and all the hard work that they did beginning in the fall semester, all the way through our state tournament that we had just a few weeks ago. Congratulations, guys.
Congratulations again to all of our DI Lone Star finalists. Moving on, our state science fair winners. Jennifer Adams, our Director of Science and Robotics, will lead this presentation. Here she comes.
There we are. Good evening, Dr. Salazar Zamora, Dr. Pratt, our distinguished board members, and all of our guests that are here today. I am so excited. I get to come back up to the podium and tell you about not just our Houston Science Fair winners, but our state Science Fair winners. I am so excited because this is the first time that we've had two young ladies beat everyone else in their knowledge of science. So I would like to have both of these young ladies come up to the front. There they come. All righty. So first off, I'd like to tell you about Miss Rowan Unser. She is a 6th grader at Creekside Park Junior High, and this is the first time she qualified for the Houston Science Fair and qualified for the State Science Fair, which is amazing. And she won 2nd place in her junior category for biomedical science. And her project is called Living Light Bulbs. She has also submitted her name for an application to go to the Thermo Fisher Scientific Junior Innovators Challenge, a lot of words, in Washington, D.C. And so we know that announcement will not be made until next school year, but we are so hopeful that Rowan will be able to make it to that challenge as well. Now, we also have Miss Sana Kale. She is a freshman at Tomball High School, and Sana has been winning science fair in the district for many, many years, and she has now won 1st place at the State Science Fair of Texas in the senior mathematics division. And her project, and forgive me if I say it wrong, detection of K167 hotspots using CNN. And what that basically means, she's looking at breast cancer numbers is what she's doing. Wow. So very excited for her. So I just love seeing that we've got two young ladies that have so much farther to go in their science careers, because we know science and young ladies go very, very well together. So I would like to give to you our two state science fair winners, Sana and Rowan.
That's awesome. No pressure. What incredible work. So why did you choose that outfit? Okay, I love that. Do us much. Make us proud. Congratulations again to both young ladies. We are very proud of your work. Now we're going to move on to Tomball High School girls soccer. Our athletic director, Kevin Flanagan, will do the next recognitions. We have a few different groups to recognize. Hello, ladies.
Thank you, doctors. Oh, can you hear me? Hello? Anything? Nothing? Louder? Okay. Very good. Got it. Dr. Pratt, Dr. Zamora, board members, cabinet, thank you for having us here this evening. We get a great honor of recognizing our girls soccer program from Tomball High. And I will say this, with Coach Parsons, we have a pretty good relationship. Anything that I give to her as far as a hard time, I think she gives it back probably doubly to me. I'm a much easier target than she is, so that's fair. But she does, I've been so impressed with the job she does, not only with just the ladies on the field, but off the field. We talk a lot about culture. We talk a lot about team building. We talk about helping these young ladies go from young ladies to women. And she is a great role model on and off the field. And couldn't be more proud of her, and the results that she's had are kind of a bonus, and she certainly had a lot of results. So, Coach Parsons, would you come up and talk about our girls soccer team?
First, I'd like to thank the Board of Trustees, Dr. Zamora, and her cabinet for inviting us here to celebrate another great season for Tomball girls soccer. I just have a few quick highlights. Our record this year was 16-3-3. Our district record was 12-2-2, and we finished second place. We had 14 shutouts and back-to-back years going to the regional semifinals. We had the district 15-6-8 midfielder, defensive, and newcomer defensive MVP. And in the classroom, they get it done as well. We had 100% passing rate, and 90% of our girls received AB honor roll. And all 7 of our seniors were awarded academic all-state by TASCO, and then 6 of our seniors were academic all-state through Texas High School Coaches Association. So I'm very proud of these girls, the work they put in on the field and in the classroom. So thank you very much.
One of the best things about being the athletic director is getting to know some of the other coaches that I did not get to know from the blue side. And Coach Abenshein, I will say, is I've been very pleased and excited to get to know her as a person, but also as a coach. And she's a rock star. And I know from talking to Ms. Collier in the classroom as well as on the field. And I've been just overly impressed with the job she does with these young ladies each and every year. It makes them compete so hard, and so extremely proud of her, and again, the job and success they've had. Coach Abenshein?
Good evening. First off, a huge thank you to our school board and our superintendent for having us to be recognized tonight and recognize all the hard work that these student athletes do. A few of our highlights this year, we went 14-3-4 overall and 12-2-2 in district play. That put us at third place in a really challenging district. We made it to the second round of playoffs to make it to the area championship. And this group of student athletes works extremely hard both on the field and in the classroom. We had a 100% passing rate for the soccer season for both varsity and JV, and we had 90% of our athletes make the academic all-district team, as well as 5 of our seniors were named to TASCO Academic All-State this year. So these seniors and this team definitely has left their mark on this program and have been huge contributors to this team's success. And again, thank you guys for having us and for the continued support.
Seeing these young ladies all dressed up and looking so nice, and then you see them on the field, and it's not the same. It's not the same. They are tough and rough, and so, again, very proud of them. Next up, I will say, and we've had a lot of success in athletics this year, from district championships in tennis and a lot of by-district championships and a lot of other championships we've had. But I will say, in my opinion, probably the best job of coaching I have seen this year is Coach Josh Grover, and where he's taken this team from where they were in the past and where they've gone this year is exceptional. And, I'm amazed and super proud of the job he's done this year. And so I can't say anything more about Coach. Again, just super impressed and glad that he is a Tomball Memorial Wildcat. Coach Grover.
Well, first, I want to say thank you for letting us be here in front of the school board and our superintendent. Thank you. These student athletes and all their hard work and dedication this soccer season. Just a little bit of background. Last year, they won 2 district games. This year, we went 14-4-4 overall. We were 9-3-4 in district play, and we went from 7th place last year to 2nd place in district this year, which is a significant jump from last year. This group of student athletes were by-district champions. We won our playoff game 2-1. We scored with 6 minutes left, and then we lost in the area finalists, but they were tremendous in their effort and their attitude throughout the whole game. 5 of these athletes made academic all-district. 6 of our seniors were named to TASCO Academic All-State. I haven't heard back yet from THSCA with what they're doing in the classroom, but all of these players have contributed to this program and the team success that we have had this year. And this is the 24-25 Tomball Memorial Wildcats.
Thank you again, Coach Flanagan, and congratulations to all of our outstanding soccer players, our young men and our young women. We are very proud of the season that you have all had. Moving on with the evening tonight with our meeting, we have 3 report items. Our first report item is the General Fund Budget Workshop. Zach Bowles, our Chief Financial Officer, will lead us in this report. Mr. Bowles.
All right, good evening. Can you hear me? Is it working? Okay, can you hear me now? All right, how's that work? Okay, well, good evening, President Dr. Pratt, Dr. Salazar Zamora, members of the board. Tonight, we'll take the opportunity to host the district's first budget workshop as a review of the 25-26 budget. Back at the end of March, Dr. Z, myself, and Claudia Munoz had the opportunity to meet with the board's budget committee and review the budget process, development process, our projections for revenue for the next fiscal year, as well as a little overview of the legislative session and the impacts it may have on Tomball ISD. So tonight, get to share that information with the board as a whole and work through those processes and answer any questions that you may have. Hang on. Okay, I'm gonna have to tap it. All right, so starting with the budget development, the development of the 25-26 budget begins in November. And so the first thing we're doing is we're putting together the budget calendar to really lay out all of the steps and the processes along the way because it's quite a lengthy process. So you can see that there are items that get tackled in each month. Starting off in November, we're looking at enrollment projections from our demographer. We're looking at making those initial revenue projections using the enrollment data, as well as looking at funding from the state, where it stands with the funding formulas, working through what we call Omar's template. We'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. And then you can see each step along the way, each month has a process that we're working through. And so when we get to March, that's where we start really engaging with the Board of Trustees and the Budget Committee. And so we started in March. We'll have committee meetings in April and May as well. And then board workshops will follow that until we get to the adoption of the budget in June. And so as a July 1 fiscal year, we're required by the state to adopt our budget by June 19th of every year. And so we have to work through that process. And so we back into that by backing up into those key timelines, those key dates, and starting there in November. But once we adopt the budget in June, that's not the end of the budget process. Actually, the end of the budget process occurs when we adopt the tax rate. And that actually happens in September because we have to wait until we get our certified property values from Harris and Montgomery County. So once we adopt that tax rate in September, we get about a month break before we start all over again. So in development of the budget, we focus on what that the design of the budget should be to accomplish these main goals, right? And so that's to provide for the educational needs of our students, whatever that need may be, ensure that we are remaining highly competitive as a district, allow for TISD to continue to recruit and retain high-quality staff, and maintain our reputation as a destination district. But at the same time, we've got to provide for the maintenance and operations of our facilities that are needed for student success. As we're developing the budget, we have to be very mindful of the economic factors that are impacting our operating environment. So we look at the Houston area and know that in general there is a tight labor market. But when you think about school districts in particular, and when you boil it down to certain positions, we're exceptionally tight labor market when you talk about teachers, when you talk about staffing special education positions. So given the intricacies of education, we know that there's a shortage with teachers across the nation, across the state, and so even in just Tomball ISD, there is still a very high demand for teachers, and so we have to be able to meet that. In the Houston area right now, as of January 2025, there's a 4.4% unemployment rate. That again lends itself to the tight labor market. And we continue to see impacts as far as material shortages, delivery issues when you talk about certain items, especially in the frame of construction. Those critical infrastructure items like HVACs, chillers, they come with long lead times. They're sort of hard to find. So we have to be mindful of what's in demand, what's maybe there's a shortage on, so we can get in front of it, get our lead times established, and make sure that we have all of the supplies and materials in place to continue to operate the district. And we'll continue to talk about the inflation and the impact that's had on Tomball ISD as well as across the state. And we'll continue to refer back to 2019 and that there has been 20% inflation in costs of supplies and materials, contracted services, as well as impacts there on the ability to retain staff and provide salaries that have kept up with inflation. But we focus on the 2019 year because that's the last time that the state of Texas increased the basic allotment for school districts in the state of Texas. And the basic allotment, really, that's your primary funding component within the state's finance formulas. And so we focus on that because it's really the easiest one to look at, and it's the basis for all of the funding when it comes time to estimate what our revenue projections are. In the Houston area, we have a consumer price index that's showing just 1% of inflation year over year. So that's from December of 2024 back to December of 2023. So we can see that inflation has slowed. That has continued to be on a downward slope since it peaked in June of 2021. And then we're constantly watching the Federal Reserve to see what they're going to do with interest rates. While the interest rates remaining high have been a benefit for the district, we've been able to increase the amount of interest income that we've brought in. We also know that they're planning to make cuts, but at this time they're somewhat delaying that based on what they see in economic policy that's driving the markets right now. And so they're somewhat delaying, but we do expect that there's potential cuts coming. So when we talk about interest income as part of the revenue projections, we're going to maintain a very conservative approach there, making sure that we don't overestimate that in any way. So again, you can see just a little excerpt here from the consumer price index showing the downward trend there in inflation since it peaked in June of 2021. And again, December year over year was at 1%. In addition, we do have complicating issues that we've focused on, and these have somewhat become a mainstay in the last few budget cycles. We continue to see big increases in the property casualty insurance premiums. As a district, Tomball ISD is actually self-funded, but we are currently out on the market running a bid going out to see what insurance premiums look like now with the appropriate amount of coverage that they can provide. So we know that that's continuing to go up with the number of natural disasters that we've seen impacting the nation, but along the Gulf Coast as well. So we do continue to see that rising, and that puts somewhat of a stress on the budget when we consider going back to the market and what those premiums might look like. Again, salaries and wages that are necessary to retain and hire staff with inflation comes along the pressure there to increase wages, provide a general pay increase that somewhat keeps up with the inflation that we've seen. And then again, with the inflation side of this, we do continue to see increases in the cost for contracted services. SRO program, our general contracts that we see across the board for utilities and things of that nature, they do continue to go up and rise. We're constantly monitoring the legislative session that is in progress now, the impacts that may come with any potential additional funding or changes to how the state is going to impact tax rate compression or homestead exemptions. That's sort of left to be seen, but we'll talk about that a little later in the presentation. And then for Tomball ISD in particular, we are considered a fast growth district, and so we receive something called the fast growth allotment. Because our growth is somewhat slowing in percentage-wise compared to where we were maybe 5-6 years ago, the calculations that they use to come up with the amount of revenue we receive for the fast growth allotment is actually reducing year over year. We're losing about $1 million there just because the numbers that they incorporate into that formula are changing. They're slowing down just a little bit. So when we're really developing the budget, we do make some assumptions, and we're very conservative with those assumptions. So for the 25-26 budget, our assumptions include a 1.5% enrollment growth. That is a conservative number when in comparison to the numbers we receive from our demographer, which is, I think, right at 1.8, closing in on 2%. But we back off of that because we are trying to be conservative, making sure that we don't overestimate the enrollment that may come in and the funding that's associated with it. That just means that we're able to absorb a little bit of a cushion, say maybe a development doesn't progress as fast as what's projected, or potentially there is obviously the legislation that is out there now in the legislative session with the implementation of the education savings account. If that were to pass, obviously this would provide cushion for what impact we think we might see out of that type of program. The tax base is another area where we make estimates and assumptions about the growth, because that does tie into not necessarily the overall amount of funding that we'll receive as a district, but how that funding responsibility gets split between the state and the local taxpayer. So we are projecting a 6% tax base growth. We'll receive preliminary estimates at the end of this month, and then we get our certified estimates in August. Again, we have the reduction of the fast growth allotment. We do know that there would be continued tax rate compression because school districts in the state of Texas, if your tax base grows more than 2.5% each year, that automatically triggers some additional tax rate compression that's required under state law. And then because there is a legislative session in progress, and nothing has yet been approved to make changes, we are developing this budget on the basis that there is no increase in state funding, that we are building this budget based on current state law. So in utilizing all of that data and those assumptions, we utilize a few tools to really hone in on what our revenue projections are going to be for the year. And so we're going to look at Omar's template. That's Omar Garcia, used to work for TEA for quite a long time, and he really developed basically, it's a 140-tab Excel spreadsheet that incorporates all of the funding intricacies, the components of the state that are impacted by state law, and help districts across the state to project revenue for the year. So we utilize that quite a bit, along with the estimates from the appraisal districts, our demographic reports, revenue and expenditure analysis. That's coming from historical actuals within the district. We're looking back at what did revenue do in prior years, what are expenditures that are tied to when we open campuses, when we have certain things occur. And so we keep that historical data available to us so that as we move through the budget process, we can analyze what type of impacts we may expect with opening an intermediate campus, opening a high school campus in the next fiscal year in 26-27. And then we utilize PEIMS data very heavily because embedded in the state's funding formulas are additional weights for special programs like special education, CTE, bilingual programs. And so we need to know what are the participants and students that are enrolled in those programs so that we can estimate the additional funding that comes along with those additional weights for those special programs. Internally, we do identify issues that may play an impact or have a greater impact in the budget process. For us, and this continues to be a ongoing conversation when we get to budget time, is the growth in special education. Over the last 5 years, and I know you'll hear more about this tonight from Dr. Webb, but our special education program has grown 70%. So we continue to see an increase in that program. That in itself, the state funding for special education last year was a little over $17 million. We spent a total of approximately $23 million on special education. And so you can see there's a little bit of a gap there when it comes to the amount of funding we receive for the program versus what we as Tomball ISD actually expend in local dollars. So there's a little bit of a gap. We have to be mindful of that in how we close it and what funds we have available to continue supporting the special education program and the growth. Facility infrastructure, that's been an ongoing discussion we've had lately about the age of our facilities. We've got 50% of our campuses older than 20 years. Some of that critical infrastructure is coming due for replacement. We've extended the life as much as possible. So internally, we know somewhere in this budget, we have to be able to take care of some of those when they creep up and they may fail along the way before we're ready to replace them. So facility infrastructure becomes a key focus for us. And then along with that, we have the opening of new facilities, which we opened West Elementary this year. West Intermediate will follow in 25-26, and West High School in 26-27. So while we are developing the budget for the 25-26 fiscal year, we're also taking a look already at the needs that are going to come with opening that high school in 26-27, so we can start to plan this out for multiple years. The external issues we already hit pretty heavy in the previous slides. And then when we get into the revenues and expenditures, tonight's focus is going to be about the revenue side of the projections. And then when we come back in May, we're going to hit expenditures heavy then and go through everything that we expect from an expenditure standpoint. So as we move into revenue projections, again, we're going to focus on the general fund. The state of Texas does require the board to adopt budgets for the general fund, the child nutrition fund, and the debt service fund. But seeing as how the general fund is our primary operating account, we're going to focus on that as far as the revenue projections. The food service, debt service, those will come in May again, and then as well as with additional discussion at the June board meeting. So when we talk about the general fund, I think it's important to start at what are the revenue sources for the general fund. For Tomball ISD, over half, 55.5%, is still coming from local funding sources. So that's going to include property taxes that are paid by our local property taxes, as well as local income from investments, interest income, enterprising activities, extracurricular activities. That's going to fall under local. At the state level, they're now representing 44% of total funding for the general fund for Tomball ISD. Prior to 2019, that was about 19%. So what's happened since then is the state's implemented tax rate compression. That impacts the maintenance and operations side of a school district's tax rate. And as the state has increased the compression on the tax rate, reduce the M&O side down, that alleviates the local tax base from their funding responsibility, but it adds to the state's funding responsibility. So you've seen a shift since 2019 from the state only providing 19% of total funding revenues to now up to 44%. So in turn, the burden on the local taxpayer has fallen quite a bit as well. And then making up less than half a percent of total general fund revenues are what we receive from the federal funds. So when we talk about state funding, obviously there's a very complex funding formulas, and so just really wanted to hit on a couple of high-level pieces here. State funding is based on average daily attendance. That means that if you have 23,000 students in the district, but your average daily attendance for those students is only 95%, then you're only going to receive 95% of that basic allotment that's set at $6,160. But at the same time, the district's going to be required to staff, maintain facilities, and have facilities based on enrollment. So attendance matters. For every 1% in attendance, that's equivalent of $1.5 million in funding that we can receive. And to put that in perspective from a teacher standpoint and the impact on the classroom, that's 19 teachers. So for every percentage of attendance or average daily attendance that we may lose or may increase, we see that type of impact. Again, the basic allotment has been left at the same level at $6,160 since 2019. And again, on the next slide, I'll show the impact of inflation since then. But along with the basic allotment, you have your special program allotments. Those are what provide the additional weights for those different programs, your special education, CTE, bilingual. That weight gets applied to the basic allotment to generate the funding for educating those students. And then the state, something that not a lot of people realize, is that the state requires a certain amount of local responsibility. So that means that school districts across the state are required to collect a certain amount in property taxes. And so what that looks like is if the school district decided to set a M&O tax rate at a lower amount that would not equal the amount of local funding responsibility that the state is requiring, then we would lose funding from the state. So our state funding would be prorated, and we'd also miss out on the additional funding from the local tax base. So when we think about the maintenance and operations tax rate today, we're currently set at the lowest we're allowed to be by state law, but we're also at the highest we're allowed to be by state law unless we were to go to voters and ask for a property tax rate increase. So our maintenance and operations side of the tax rate is set exactly where it can be without coming back to taxpayers and asking for additional dollars or losing dollars from the state of Texas in state funding. And so again, you can see the impact of the basic allotment. Last time it was changed there was for the 2019-2020 school year and fiscal year, but has remained at the same dollar amount for the last 6 years. But at the same time, since 2019, you've seen 20% in inflation. So those dollars in the basic allotment don't go as far as they used to. The latest projection out of, I believe this was the Texas Association of School Business Officials, was that in order to keep up with inflation, that 20%, the basic allotment would need to increase about $1,600. So that's quite a big jump, and we'll talk more about what the legislature is proposing once we get into that section, but it's not anywhere near $1,600 in the basic allotment. At the local level, that funding is going to include property taxes. Our total tax rate that we have today is $1.06 and 29 cents, and that tax rate, what we can say is that our total tax rate of the school district has been held flat or lowered over the last 20 years, and I believe the current tax rate is now the lowest it's been in 30 years. So we do that is our number one goal in the district, is to ensure that we aren't increasing the total tax rate for our taxpayers, that they can see the impacts of what the state's been doing to reduce property taxes, whether that be through the homestead exemption or tax rate compression. We've been able to maintain our operations and the ability to lower the tax rate over time as well. Investment income is another one that becomes a big factor in local funding, especially at the interest rates that we're seeing today. The Federal Reserve does continue to evaluate that, whether or not they will continue to remain steady at their current rate, or if they will continue along with any decreases or cuts to the interest rates. With the projected cuts to the interest rates, we still need to be very conservative in our projections. So when we look at history in just a minute, as far as our revenue, you'll see that last year's fiscal year, we collected quite a bit of interest income. In the current year's budget, we backed way off of that because the projection at the time we adopted the current year was that there were going to be multiple cuts made throughout the year. So far, that just hasn't occurred. And so we're, again, going to be very conservative with that interest estimate because there's some uncertainty there with what the Fed is going to do. We do have the opportunity, and when we can, take advantage of enterprising activities. Two of the ones I'd like to highlight there are our current lease with Baker Hughes. So out at the Innovation Center, we inherited a lease that existed at the time we purchased the property that was formerly BJ Services. And so out of that, we've come away with a lease for Building 1 that sits on the corner at 2978 and 2920. And so we recoup about $1.3 million in lease revenue every year, along with the property taxes that come from that property. The Mud Utility Partnership, that is a look out at the Beckendorf complex. And so when we constructed the Beckendorf complexes, those facilities on the complex, we needed to be able to provide water and wastewater services. We built our own facilities, but those facilities had capacity where we could actually partner with the Mud 572, and they have since then, they have connected what you see there on the corner at Cypress Rose Hill and the Grand Parkway, where you have Whataburger, Chick-fil-A, the apartment complex, as well as Ellerden, which is a new development just north of the Beckendorf complex. And so what we've been able to do there through that partnership and through our agreements with them is basically once they are fully connected, they will fully repay the cost of building that initial plant as it was. And so on top of that, we're receiving monthly usage fees as well that go to offset the operations of those facilities, the water and the wastewater treatment plants.
Hey, Zach, that was an important point. Can you quantify that dollar amount that we've recouped for the cost of the utility partnership?
So far, we have recouped approximately $3 million in connection fees, but the agreement we have in place, once the MUD is fully developed and the connections that they have agreed upon, will recoup close to $7 million. All right. So we talked a little bit about the tax rate. I think it's just very important for that people understand when we talk about the total tax rate for Tomball ISD, there's two components. When we get to the tax rate adoption in September, I'll have an entire presentation about how all of this works, so I won't go too in depth, but just very important to remember that there's two buckets to the tax rate. The maintenance and operations, that's your day-to-day operations. It's going to fund salaries, classroom supplies, utilities, transportation. The interest and sinking side of that is what's going to be used to repay the debt on bonds that are authorized by and issued or authorized by the voters and issued by the district. And so that funding from the bond funds can only be used for capital expenditures, land purchases, construction of new facilities, renovations, technology, new buses. So those are two separate pieces of the tax rate. The maintenance and operations side is what comes into play when we're talking about the general funds budget. So just wanted to highlight that a little bit. Again, we'll go into a very in-depth discussion on that once it comes time to adopt the tax rate. And then federal funding, obviously, as we pointed out, makes up a very small portion of the general fund, but wanted to highlight a little bit about the federal funding we do receive as a district. The first two there, the SHARS Medicaid reimbursements and the indirect costs, those are what makes up the less than 0.5% of the general fund's federal funding. So the Medicaid reimbursement is for Medicaid eligible services that we provide to students. The indirect cost comes from the administration of the federal grants that we receive. And so we do get reimbursement through indirect costs for our operations that are needed to administer the federal grants. At the federal level itself, we also receive funding for child nutrition through the National School Lunch Program, the School Breakfast Program. We receive title funding through the Every Student Succeeds Act and IDA funding for special education for the Individuals with Disability Education Act. And I have a pretty good one slider there from Xochitl Salazar, our Director of Federal Programs, that somewhat lays out all of our federal funding that we receive. So under Title I or under title funds under the ESSA, we're receiving about $2.5 million, $2.3 million in federal funding. Special education provides about 3.7% or $3.7 million under IDEA. We receive Perkins grants for CTE. And then the safety and special grant down there, that's state and local funds, but this is a good one slider that has all of our federal funding in one place. So when we look at the general fund and focus there, our breakdown is going to be that total revenue estimates for the 25-26 fiscal year are going to be $220 million. Broken down, we're looking at property taxes, again, making up about 50% or a little bit more of that funding source. That's going to be a current projection based on the state's estimate as far as what potential compression could be if our growth is 6%. The other local revenue, that's going to be investment income. Again, this is a little bit lower than what you're going to see on the next slide when we talk about history, but that's going to be because we're expecting continued cuts from the Federal Reserve that for the fiscal year, the interest rates we see today won't be there, so we want to make sure that we're conservative in that approach. The teacher incentive allotment is new funding that we're now receiving from the state. But again, this is a flow through to our teaching staff. This is not funding that we get to receive for daily operations, but it needs to be accounted for in the revenue of the district. The fast growth allotment is at $7 million. That was $8.1 million for the current fiscal year. That $7 million is just reflective of the reduced numbers that are involved in that calculation now. The hold harmless is listed as a negative $3.3 million, and the reason behind that is because when the state enacted legislation that required to go back and look at the homestead exemptions as well as the compression for our over 65 population, that new law and subsequent reduction in the taxable values for those individuals resulted in a reduction of the amount of tax revenue that the district could collect. Primarily, that impacted the interest and sinking side of the tax rate and the amount that we had available to pay for our debt service. So when the state impacts homestead exemptions, when there's a mandated tax rate compression, the state provides what's called a hold harmless to replace the dollars that are lost. And so the reason it shows as a negative in the general fund is because the state, the way the state has proceeded with providing the funds to the district is it runs through the general fund, and then we have to take it and apply it to the debt service, the interest and sinking side. So we have to pull it out of our total revenue that we're going to receive from the state under the general fund side and make sure that we account it for correctly in the debt service. TRS on behalf is another layer to state revenue at $12.5 million that encompasses it's an accounting recognition of the state's contribution for retirement and retirement insurance for teachers and school district staff. And so we have to record an offsetting revenue and an offsetting expenditure that balance out. So it's not additional funding that we get for operations, it's merely a accounting procedure. And then the remaining state aid there at just under $75 million, that's again going to be after you back out some of those allotments, some of the hold harmless, the teacher incentive, and the TRS on behalf. That's the amount of state aid that we're receiving from the state. And then your federal funding at just over $1 million, which again is less than 0.5%.
Hey, Zach, on the federal funding, thanks for the slide that depicts our total, but specific to the $1,064,000 here, based upon the Department of Education, and I'll call it efficiency efforts, any headwinds, concerns about receiving those in light of what's happening in Washington, D.C. for the Department of Education?
I would say not at this time. There may be changes that are coming, but we just don't know what those look like. Okay. From the federal funding for the general fund, that SHARS side has really been impacted by audits that have come out of the past that have reduced down the amount that districts receive. And so that impact has come more from the federal audits that impacted school districts across the state. And then the offsetting side of that is indirect costs. So as long as the federal grants continue, you'll continue to see the indirect costs that'll come in.
Okay, so at this point in our budget planning cycle, we're assuming the dollars we've received in the past from the federal government are still intact, still whole. Obviously, we'll continue to monitor over the next couple months before we have to approve the budget, but at this point, it's looking favorable.
That's correct. So we'll continue to monitor, like you said, but at this time, we don't see an impact just yet. Okay. So revenue history, obviously, we like to look back at our historical analysis, look at what our changes over prior years have been, and you can see from 21-22 through to 23-24, there's a downward trend in the amount of percentage change from each year, but overall an increase in the revenue that's being received. And so in the current year was $214 million. We're projecting $220 million for 25-26. That would be a 2.8% increase. The reason why the current year at 0.47% looks a little funny there when compared to the prior 3 years is because in 23-24 you had some one-time things that come in as far as audits of our taxable values. You had interest income that stayed way up in regards to the expectations of when we adopted the budget. I can say that based on where we see interest rates now and the interest income that we've received, our number for the budgeted in 24-25 is low because we projected multiple cuts by the Fed. That just hasn't happened, so the rates have stayed high. We've been able to take advantage of that and increase the amount of interest income we received in the current year. So that percent gain in 24-25 is going to be look a little bit different once we finalize at the end of the year. But as of right now, it's going to look a little funny just because of where we initially budgeted and what our projected expectations were. Along with the projected revenue for 25-26, we are holding our estimate on the overall total tax rate of the district at $1,629. That's because we don't have our estimates yet from the appraisal district to determine exactly how that's going to play out, and then ultimately when we finally adopt the tax rate in September. All right, so issues to watch. The legislature we're going to talk about in just a second, but continuing to affect the budgets would be the pressure on operating budgets for supplies and services, materials with the inflation that's gone on, continuing pressures on salaries and wages to recruit and retain the best staff that we can. And then from a payroll standpoint, it's just being mindful that payroll is over 86% of the total budget. So that is there's very little left to play with after you address payroll for the district. All right, so legislative session. Not a lot has been finalized yet. There's been a lot of discussion. Both the Senate and the House have their approaches that are very different. When you talk about property tax reduction, teacher pay increase, the basic allotment, school safety, as well as special education. But those are the 5 big topics that would be impacting Tomball ISD from a financial standpoint. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing, what the potential impacts might be. On the property tax relief side, the Senate has a version that is focused on increasing the homestead exemption by another $40,000. So it would increase the homestead exemption currently from $100,000 to $140,000, as well as the Senate is going to maintain their commitment to the tax rate compression that was initially passed in 2019. Their budget bill, Senate Bill 1, includes $51 billion for continuing the tax rate compression as it exists now. So not additional tax rate compression, but just the existing law as it exists is costing the state $51 billion. And then they are going to consider continued property tax relief under the homestead exemption. On the House side, they also, as well in their budget bill, would continue to fund the existing tax rate compression, but the House's approach with property tax relief would continue to focus on adding additional tax rate compression to the maintenance and operations tax rate. While they do have a bill in there about increasing the homestead exemption, it's not getting a lot of play. Although I have heard comments about the Lieutenant Governor as well as the Speaker of the House talking about a possible increase to $200,000 for our over 65 population. So there could be some potential changes there as they work through their bills. But again, they're taking 2 very different approaches to get there, and so we've got to see what they come up with. But either way, there would be an impact to Tomball ISD if continuing to increase and accelerate the M&O tax rate compression. That's just going to continue to shift the funding responsibility over to the state. So that's going to add to that $51 billion that they're already accounting for in the budget. It's going to lower the amount of local responsibility for our taxpayers. On the homestead exemption side, again, there's going to come with a reduction in the overall taxable value. That's going to have primarily a more of an impact on the interest and sinking side of the tax rate. But along with any of those state mandates for homestead exemption increases, the state has provided a hold harmless for the dollars that are lost. From the school finance lens, we're watching both, again, the Senate and the House have two very different approaches when it comes to school finance. The Senate has allocated $4.85 billion for school funding, $4.1 billion of that for teacher and retention allotment, so teacher pay, and then $750 million for the teacher incentive allotment changes there that would increase layers of that program to provide more access for more staff members. And then both the Senate and the House are taking a look at special education. Again, there you heard the gap there between what we get in state revenue and what we spend on the program. They are looking at changes to how they identify the funding levels and the weights that are associated with it. Mention the teacher retention allotment, just a few details there. It is currently specified for classroom teachers only. And for districts that are in excess of 5,000 students, the allotment would include $2,500 for teachers with 3 to 4 years of experience, and then $5,500 for teachers with 5 or more years of experience. And right now, that appears to be a one-time increase. The state would have the funding allocated for one biennium. If you are in a district that's less than 5,000, those allotment amounts double. They go to 5,000 and 10,000 for those districts under 5,000 students in enrollment. And so ours would be looking at 2,500 and 5,500. On the House side, they just recently passed their budget appropriation bill. And so they've included $7.7 billion for school funding. A portion of that is for expected enrollment growth across the state. So that's $1.7 billion is set there to primarily just account for the enrollment growth and expected growth for the statewide. But incorporated into that funding is going to be a potential or proposed $395 increase to the basic allotment. Again, looking at the weights and severity of services, change to the funding model for special education. This one got left on here, but unfortunately we no longer qualify. The funding assistance for property insurance is something that the state was looking at for those regions along the Gulf Coast. Included in that would have been Harris County, but when you look at their map, they include a very, very small portion of Harris County that sits on Galveston Bay, I think LaPorte area, and then nobody else would qualify. So we would not be eligible for any funding assistance for property insurance, where we thought we might get some dollars there to help out. The basic allotment increase at $395 while proposed, again, it shows the differences between the House and the Senate. The Senate is not proposing anything for the basic allotment. The House is. Again, the estimates were that to make whole just to bring our purchasing power back up to what it's had to account for in the 20% inflation, we would need a basic allotment increase of $1,600. So obviously $395 is very far from that number, but does provide funding for Tomball ISD. The additional revenue we could expect to see under that would be approximately $10 million, but tied to an increase in the basic allotment is the House's approach to funding teacher pay increases. So what would be required for every dollar increase gain you saw from the increase in the basic allotment, 40% of that gain would be required to go to salary increases for teachers. And so that's really their method for addressing teacher pay increase. It's to give some in the basic allotment, so districts do get some money for day-to-day operations, but at the same time there's a requirement to address teacher pay with the 40% of that gain. The school safety allotment is another area that we've seen a shortage in funding when it comes to those mandates that are required. And so currently we receive $10 per average daily attendance student plus $15,000 per campus. Senate Bill 260 and House Bill 124 have a little bit different number there for the ADA, but ultimately those two would essentially double what we receive today. We get about $540,000 for the school safety allotment today. That would roughly double it if either one of these were passed. Again, that would still only give us about $1 million in state funding for the school safety and those mandates. Our SRO program is in excess of $2.6 million. So the cost for that mandate will exceed even the additional funding that they're talking about now. Just wanted to provide a list of our contacts with the House and the Senate, and then open it up for any questions.
Are there any questions for Mr. Bowles after his very thorough report? Thank you so much for that. Now, that's a lot of information to put together. We appreciate the committee that has worked through this and is going to continue to work through this, and the work that you and your team that is here tonight continue to try to get us all of the most factual information in a timely manner, in a time where we don't know where things will land, right, in the legislative session. So thank you so much.
Yep, no problem.
Follow-up?
Just a couple of questions. On the enrollment projections I saw in November, do we get an update, like a mid-year update? Because that seems like a lot of months between demographic data and locking down the budget.
Yeah, we get a spring report as well. So we're going to start with the initial, and then as we move through the year and continue to progress through the budget process, we'll update as we get updates.
And then I know we talked before about the floor and the ceiling, but it still doesn't make any sense. How can we be at the exact floor and the ceiling at the same time? It seems like we have no space. Is there something unique about our district, or are there lots of other districts in that same situation?
There's lots of districts in the same situation. I don't have those numbers in front of me, but I know it's pretty close to about 60% of districts are at the floor as well. So it comes as a combination of what the state sets as a statewide compression of the maintenance and operations tax rate, and then a component of it with our local tax base growth. So because we've been very fast growth over the last few years, the state will provide their statewide compression, setting a new amount for what every district in the state has to be at for their maintenance and operations tax rate. And then they set a floor at 90% of that statewide rate. School districts in the state can't go below the 90% floor. They get capped. So even though our tax base growth would have pushed us well below that floor, we're capped by the state at where we can set it. So that's why we say we're at the lowest amount we can be, because the state places that cap on us. But then at the same time, we can't increase the maintenance and operations tax rate without having to go back to taxpayers to ask for a tax rate election.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bowles. We appreciate that. Okay, thank you again. We do have two more report items and a review of the agenda item, but I'm going to, agenda meeting, I'm going to turn the meeting over to our board president at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Z. At this time, the board will be taking a recess. So time is now 7:02 p.m. Thank you.
I would like to add, staff, the board president and I had a quick discussion up here. Again, we do have two reports and a review of the meeting for tomorrow night. We also know it's springtime and you are putting in a lot of hours. When we come back, you don't need to be here. If you'd like to stay, you're always welcome, but you don't need to. So I suspect you will leave. Yes, we love you too. Thank you, guys. It's April, but it's not April Fool's. Yeah, they were like, oh, yeah, that's right. Yes, sir, we are.
Everybody ready? The Board of Trustees will now resume our meeting. The time is now 7:47 p.m. and turn the meeting back over to our Superintendent of Schools for 2 reports.
Thank you, Dr. Pratt. The next report item we have this evening is special education requirements. Our Chief Academic Officer, Dr. Michael Webb, will lead us in this report.
President Pratt, Dr. Zamora, members of the board and cabinet, happy to bring to you this evening an overall report. An overall report on special education enrollment, funding, and requirements. It's no secret that in the state of Texas, no secret that in the state of Texas, overall enrollment in special education has skyrocketed since 2017, 2018. Almost every single district in the state of Texas also has experienced rapid enrollment increase in the program of special education. This is in part to 2 primary factors. Number 1, the reclassification of the dyslexia methodology for the identification of students with learning disabilities, and then number 2, the removal of a TEA special education cap on the number of special education kids percentage in the year 2017. So when you look at Tomball, we have moved from 1,700 kids to almost 3,000 kids today in special education. This rapid growth in the number of students has complemented the rapid growth overall for the district. But if you look in this next graph, also what has increased significantly is the percentage of students with disabilities in comparison to the overall student enrollment in Tomball. So just 5 years ago, we were just at 9% of the overall enrollment students in special education, and today we sit at 13% of the students in Tomball are eligible for special education services. So this represents an increase of 70% increase in 70% special education students in the last 5 years. So with the increase in enrollment comes the increase in expenditures and funding for the program. So your top red line is the amount that Tomball ISD contributes to the special ed program per year. So again, 5 years ago, we were just at $15 million, and then as Mr. Bowles mentioned in his presentation, we are now approaching $22 million locally to support the program of special education. The bottom line is the federal funds that we get, our IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That number is not as influenced by our enrollment growth. So that number has stayed fairly static over the last 5 years. It's now at about 3.5 million, is about 2.5 million 5 years ago. This represents a 53% increase in local funding for special education in just 4 years. At the heart of special education is what is called a free and appropriate public education, otherwise known as FAPE. FAPE is the entitlement for every child with a disability to receive supports and services regardless of the degree of their disability. FAPE even goes further to say there are some students, because of the degree of their disability, could not be educated in their school district. The demands of their disability surpass the capacity of supports and services in the district. And then what we know from FAPE is even for these students also are entitled a free and appropriate public education, even if that requires the district to pay tuition at a private school, a private facility, or in Texas, any non-public day school or residential school that is approved by TEA. So the way FAPE is applied in Tomball ISD is through a number of programs, supports, and services. So this is not just a category of 6 or 7 different types of programs. This represents the combination of programs that we have across what we call our continuum of services. So in the green are the least restrictive services that we have. So we have many of our students that are taught many of our students with disabilities that are taught in general education settings. These students receive supports, accommodations, and are able to access the general education curriculum with those minor adjustments. We have other students that receive in-class support. These students are supported intermittently throughout the day or throughout the week by a special education paraprofessional or special education teacher who goes into the classroom. Specialized support is more specific support to where a student is pulled out for intervention by a special ed teacher in a specialized support setting, but then return to the classroom as quickly as possible to again access the same curriculum that all other students are accessing. About 75% of our students with disabilities are served in these top 3 settings. When you move also towards our least restrictive setting, but when you look at our program to support students with behavioral challenges that are a part of their disability, we have a program called Positive Approach to Student Success, PASS. PASS is our inclusive support of students with disabilities to help manage their behavioral challenges throughout the school day. Most of these students are placed in general education settings, but they have opportunities to access a lower ratio setting to help manage the behavior. When you move towards the yellow, we have separate special ed settings. So these are separate special ed rooms where a teacher of record is a special education teacher. Our developmental program, very successful, typically has students with intellectual disabilities and other types of disabilities that would require a student to access an alternate curriculum, and then even take, for example, what's called the STAR alternative and not the state standard STAR. We also have what's called a structured learning lab. These students typically are students with autism. They also typically demonstrate many behaviors that are consistent with autism. Both of these classrooms, developmental and SLL, we have a ratio of 3-to-1. And we keep most of these classrooms capped at 9 or 10 students. Adaptive behavior is really the most restrictive setting that we have in our district. Adaptive behavior is a program at the elementary level that is staffed 1 to 2. And then staffed 1 to 3 as the kids get older. But this program is in place to support the students with disabilities with the most challenging behaviors that are a part of their disability. Then we have what is in red. So these are non-public day placements in residential schools that are approved by TEA. So if a student's disability exceeds our capacity to support them in the district, then the district then in turn is obligated to fully fund at no cost or FAPE for these students in non-public or residential settings. So a student who would be a candidate for a residential setting or a non-public day school, again, is going to be a student with extreme disability-based challenging behavior. We have the teachers in our district to support these students. We have the leadership in our district to support these students. But when we support these students on a comprehensive campus, whether it's Tomball High School with 3,000 kids or whether it's at Wildwood with 800 kids, the demands of that environment, arrival, dismissal, transition, lunch, far exceed the student's ability to respond. And what results is an extreme isolation on these campuses to support these students. So when we exceed the capacity of our supports, then what we do is partner with the parent in our IEP or our ARD meetings to look at different non-public day schools that are approved in our area. Parent consent always is a part of this process. Parents, again, would have to approve. The whole ARD committee would have to be in agreement for one of these placements to occur. We have a transition plan in place for every single one of these students, which we monitor on a biweekly basis to where we have staff going to these facilities to ensure that they're receiving their IEP supports. And then the goal is for any of these students to return as quickly as possible. Some students do return within a year, but we do have others that would, have an extended placement at these facilities that could go 2, 3, 4, or 5 years. So the number of students right now that we are serving in a TEA-approved non-public school is 8. We will surpass by the end of this school year our projection for 26-27. So we do anticipate to have 9 kids in a non-public day school by the end of this school year, and then this is a projected growth of saying conservatively 1 to 2 students per year increase in the number of kids that we are providing supports to in these type of settings. So the tuition cost, again, these costs are, or is at no cost to the parent. Again, it's at public expense. Today, we are just shy of $750,000 on an annual basis to fund these placements. So to break this cost down a little bit further, if you look at Tomball ISD, if that is a location for services within special education, if we're looking at our most restrictive settings, so a setting with a ratio of 3 to 1, those classrooms are going to be capped at 9 or 10 students. In those classrooms, we would have at least one teacher, one paraprofessional, or two paraprofessionals and one teacher. Their salaries added up would equal $128,000. Divide that by 10 on a ratio of 3 to 1, that's spending about $12,850 per student in our most restrictive setting. Again, this number can change a little bit based on the level of related services a student receives, such as occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech, but the foundational cost is about $13,000 per student. So as you look down, these are our current contracts that we have in place today with TEA non-public schools. So the first is Bays. Bays operates a residential school where the student lives and goes to school at that facility. And then they also operate a day school there. So we have 2 students at Bays, which is located in Huntsville, at $408,000. It's $204,000 per student for kids we have placed at Bays. River Oaks, Avondale, and Monarch each have 1 student. And those placements range from $46,000 to $60,000 per year, so that would be $46,000 to $60,000 per year per student. Harris County operates ABS West, and we have 3 students there. The total cost for ABS West for the 3 students is $71,400, bringing that to a per student cost of $23,800. In addition to the tuition costs, we also fund transportation at no expense to the parent as well. So each of these students have an individual bus route to each of these facilities. On average, we pay $24,857 on an annual basis per student as an average transportation cost. So here's just a quick look at the mileage that our buses are covering. So Bays, like I said, is located in Huntsville. It's a 114-mile round trip for the 1 student that we do have there at the day school. Then we have a 42-mile round trip to River Oaks, which is off of I-10 in Westheimer. Avondale, Monarch, and Harris County all are in Southwest Houston, ranging from 80 miles a round trip to 86 miles per round trip per student.
Dr. Webb?
Yes.
Just so I get this picture, these students are being picked up in the morning in a Tomball ISD vehicle, and we're transporting them, and we have a driver, and the driver repeats that in the afternoon, picks them up. What's the typical day? Is it like a normal school day kind of time frame?
So typically the transportation is managed with our white fleet, but we not only have a driver, but we also have at least 1 attendant on the bus as well for safety purposes. So depending on, we have buses that go back and forth to Harris County, but when you go to Bays, perhaps you could have a day in which the bus restays in Huntsville.
Okay, so you have 2 employees that are. Well, how many buses do you have going to Bays again?
We just have 1 bus going to Bays.
Okay.
With 1 student.
Got it.
The Harris County bus, I believe, has 2, because we do have a student that has exceeded the capacity for us to transport, so now we reimburse the parent per mile in order to transport the student to ABS West, which is Harris County, at a substantial cost.
And the type of buses you said are the white?
White fleet.
Okay, white fleet. Okay, thank you.
Right, are there any overall questions I can answer on special education requirements?
And that's a bus per of those campus. It's not that it's making.
No, yes,
several
this are not multiple routes. This is 1 bus per campus, typically per student, because of the safety dynamics on that bus.
Dr. Webb, could you go back to the slide where you basically show the continuum of services? You had quoted a percent for items above the line, the line where you say less restrictive or more restrictive. You had kind of, I'm trying to get in my head kind of percentages. So above the line you said was roughly what?
About 70% above the line and in green. So in-class support, general education, and specialized support are students with disabilities that are served primarily in the general education classroom.
Yeah. If you could kind of continue on that kind of line of thinking. So I got it kind of the left side of the slide, roughly 70%, thinking above and below the line. As you reflect on the developmental, the SLL, and the AB, can you kind of, I guess the answer is somewhere around 29%, because then your far right is about 1%? Or less than 1%?
Yeah, so if you just look at adaptive behavior across the district, we have fewer than probably 25 students in total in adaptive behavior K through 12.
Okay.
So it's a small percentage. Our developmental and SLL also is a smaller percentage. And then, yes, it's you're looking at well under 1% of non-public day school and residential on the number of students. But if you look at the cost, the cost is not the same.
So continuing on that and kind of focusing on SLL and AB part of that slide, I believe I've been in a structured learning lab classroom. I understand the ratio of students and staff in there. You said that's only at the elementary level? Or did I hear, maybe that was what I interpreted?
Correct. So structured learning lab will operate at the elementary and the intermediate level, as well as developmental, and then that would merge into a program called PALS at junior high and high school.
Okay. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. I'm just trying to get the flow here. So at the elementary and intermediate level, we offer as services for SLL. Those campuses are the facilities are built, or we at least made accommodations to support those students. I didn't quite get the adaptive behavior. Can you describe that a little bit and how that's different than SLL?
Yes, adaptive behavior typically have students who can access the general education curriculum. These students can typically are at a level to where we can assess them with the STAR assessment and every other assessment that we provide students without disabilities. Their disability is more emotional based. Most of these kids in this program do have an emotional disability. Compared to students in structured learning lab, to where they do have, this is looking more at factors associated with autism, and in many cases these students are not at a level that can access the same curriculum as other students. They are operating on the alternate assessment. You would rarely have a student in adaptive behavior on an alternate assessment or alternate curriculum.
Okay.
These programs are not defined by disability, so there's a combination, but it would be very rare. That's the distinguishing factor.
Adaptive behavior students at the elementary and intermediate level are on the campuses or no?
They are on our comprehensive campuses. They are not necessarily on their home campus.
Okay.
So we might have a student that is zoned to Tomball Intermediate, but as the IEP has determined adaptive behavior is the best placement, so that student would be supported at North Point.
So building back on the program, once a student progresses past the elementary and the intermediate level, can you expand a little bit more on PALS and where we're offering services for those students?
So we do have a PALS program on every junior high campus and every high school campus. Every student that is eligible for those services can access those services on their home campus. Adaptive behavior is not the same. So we only have an adaptive behavior classroom at Tomball Memorial, and then we have adaptive behavior at Tomball Junior High. At elementary, we have at intermediate, we have adaptive behavior at North Point, and then elementary, Wildwood, Decker Prairie, and West Elementary.
What's the ratio of adaptive behavior to adult to, is it 2 to 1?
2 to 1 at early elementary, and then it goes to 3 to 1 as the students get older, and that could go all the way to high school. In general, there are exceptions to where we have students in here that are at one-to-one. And in general, before we look at a non-public day placement and all of these are for our behavioral reasons, we also have ruled out one-to-one support as being effective.
I want to come back to our last visit on the bond proposal. You had talked about the services we offer for our non-public day placement. And you had demonstrated here we have 8 or 9 students currently. You've sort of shared there's roughly 750,000 that's projected with, an addition of 1 or 2 students to go to 1.2, 1.3 million. And then you talked about transportation and roughly 22,000 per student. If I just connect the dots from our last conversation to this one, the opportunity with a piece of that bond in Proposition A would be to bring the capacity to about 10 when we would potentially renovate Tomball intermediate spaces. So we would lower our tuition costs for the non-public day placement, and then we could potentially significantly lower the transportation costs. Can you expound a little bit on the logic behind what you shared last month?
So yes, if we were able to expand our continuum of services beyond what we have now, so we were able to merge and provide more restrictive supports and services, we could do so at a lower cost, but we would also do so at a much higher quality. We do have the skills in the district to support these students. We have the leadership to support these students. We do not have the environment or the classroom space to support these students right now. So yes, Proposition A would allow for us to backfill Tomball Intermediate with a program to serve these students in district.
In our recent budget committee meeting, Zach had shared some of the numbers, and I think we've seen them here. When I look at first of all, I'm all about free, appropriate public education, or I wouldn't be sitting here and being active in this conversation. But when I just look at the numbers, the business side of this, 70% growth of the continuum of services in the last 5 years. When I look at the adequacy of funding, we are spending more average than the general ed students. And I think your slide said something like 53% more over the course of the last 5 years. And so this is becoming an expensive part of the budget that obviously we need to continue to provide free and appropriate public education for. But this idea where we could potentially figure out ways to offer higher quality at a lesser cost to continue to provide these type of services makes a ton of sense for me, which was a part of the Proposition A. And so I just worry that we are becoming a magnet district for these services, and our local funding or our legislature doesn't fund them at the appropriate or adequate level, and this grows. Again, don't take me wrong, I'm about free and appropriate public education and funding it, but just from the business side of this, these numbers are mind-blowing on what our services needs are. And I don't know that you want to comment, but if you please do, as you think about how we manage the budget part of this.
So as a former, many years ago, director of special education and somebody who completely understands the importance of FAPE and wanting to do this, as we do very well in this district, and I think that's part of what has happened. When you do things well, people want to be a part of something, destination in many ways, right? But there are additional costs that come, and we are very proud of the services. I see Carrie Williams in the audience here and her team, and of course led by Dr. Webb. People come because they want to know their children that have some of the most extreme challenges identified under IDEA, Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. They want for their children to receive the highest quality education, but you are correct, it comes at a cost. One of the things we've looked at is, I believe what you're alluding to, which is how can we bring services that we're expending large amounts of dollars.
I'm being direct.
Closer.
I'm not alluding to it. I'm
Right.
being very direct. Yeah.
Yeah, directly asking, how, of course, needing to look at where we would do this. Can we do this? We know that we can do this, but there's a bigger piece to this when you look at a child that already has some behavioral or other issues having to be on a bus morning and afternoon. So not only for our own children is there a benefit because they would stay in district and not have to travel daily. Of course, there's a cost savings. But then there was the idea, because we always look at, where is Zach, entrepreneurial opportunities and ways in which we can help others. And that may be neighboring districts that are doing the same thing. So the thought was, what if we were able to provide this service that would benefit our kids in a better way without all the transportation, additional daily transportation and challenges that come with that, and then provide that perhaps to other districts and actually make it a revenue generator in an entrepreneurial spirit. But of course, that would require the space.
Can you go to the map? And I'll finish with this. I know Dr. G does a great job of tracking our buses and the amount of time our routes take, but we have these children on these buses for a significant part of the day not getting services. Right? We're in the situation we're in, absolutely doing our best to provide those services, but they're on those buses for a long time and they're not getting services. So I love this idea of bringing quality close to home and how we work to continue to save the dollars, but limit the amount of bus time. I mean, that child going to Bays, I mean, that's 2 hours there, 2 hours back. Are they getting 3 to 4 hours of services? I don't know. That kind of hurts my heart, to be honest with you. Thanks.
Are there no similar facilities anywhere in Northwest Harris County? That just boggles my mind with the amount of students that we have in districts near us and ours, that there's no comparable facilities closer.
You'd even look at Waller and Conroe have students at Harris County in ABS West, which is near Chimney Rock and 59. The state list is much smaller than what you would expect. And of course, the regional list is even smaller. This actually represents almost every school on the regional list. I don't think there are. Shiloh might be 1, 2 others, but this is the regional list.
I think that the state ledge is looking hopeful for the funding formulas based on the intensity of services, is my understanding. Do we have any concept of, I think the difference when you said 17 million to 23 million would be the gap kind of between what we're legally, required to provide versus what the state funds, that gap. Do we have any idea how much that might be closed?
From what we saw when we were up there last week, there's a lot of mandates that they want. It is on. There's a lot of mandates that they want to pass down, but there's no talks of any dollar amounts attached to those mandates.
Senator Betancourt has put forth a special education bill, but the feedback we got was it's too early in the process to understand, and Zach's nodding his head yes, what the impact might be to, ideally.
We are hopeful, but we have been hopeful before. This isn't the first time that we've heard you will see an increase in special education. As a matter of fact, it's been many years. But the conversation comes up, and our hopes continue.
But I agree with Mr. Pratt, Dr. Pratt. It hurts my heart that our most vulnerable have to be on those buses for that long of time. And I know that has to be so stressful for those moms and dads of those sweet babies. So I hope that we have a good outcome in May and that we're able to provide services much closer to home.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any additional questions or comments for Dr. Webb?
Are districts that are closer to these facilities denying students?
Well, many of the districts that are closer to these facilities are larger than we are, and they have their own programs, such as the Carlton Center and Cy-Fair, or such as TEP and Klein. HISD has a number of programs. Now, they still access some of these schools, but they have a continuum of services that's much broader than ours. You would see a broader continuum of services in Aldine. But we are getting to the size that we need to look at expanding our continuum of services as well.
Part of that is what happens with growth, and we're at that point, but then capitalizing on not only being able to do that for our students, but perhaps helping others and generate additional revenue for our district. But that's a good question. Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Webb. We appreciate it.
One question.
One more.
Dr. Webb, do the parents of these disabled students have input into where the kids are put so they can select a location?
We try to make a match based on the student's profile, the proximity as close as we can get it, but every parent is visiting these facilities in person. Every parent is a part of the ARD committee decision to place the student there, but absolutely parents are involved, and they see the facilities.
On that note, I thought of, do we have, you know how we have the annual family survey? Do we have a survey that goes to special education families, or can we pull those out of the total survey to kind of get a feel for?
Yeah, I think to get a perspective for these parents, we could go right to the ARD document. There's a lot that's documented historically from the parents, from the school, as to the amount of progress the student has been making. And these are the most restrictive environments that are offered, but when the students are making progress, the parents are very supportive of the placements.
I'm saying, sorry, just the total special education population in Tomball ISD. Do we have in aggregate some family, feedback survey at all, like we do in the Panorama survey for everyone?
No, we don't do one on an annual basis. We have done them before, but not on an annual basis.
There's no way to pull special education families out of the Panorama survey to see their satisfaction with the district?
I don't want to commit to that, but I can check for you. I believe that we can pull the demographics on the family respondents. But let me check first before I guarantee that.
Yeah.
I believe we can, but let me check.
I'd love to see that, like, over time, right? The family, the climate, how the families feel or satisfied with the program, just in aggregate.
The fact that it continues to increase says they're not leaving for sure. But that is a good point. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Webb. We appreciate your report. Our final report for the evening is UIL requirements. We have Kevin Flanagan, our athletic director, and Paulette Tomlinson, our fine arts director, that will both share in a piece of this presentation on the UIL requirements.
Good evening, President Pratt, Dr. Z, members of the board. We are here tonight to talk about the UIL guidelines for our activities that practice and rehearse outdoors. We're coming up on the summer, and we are going to start running into those warmer days, and so we wanted to just do a quick review of what we needed to know and how that might impact our students and their performance. Okay, so what we're going to talk about tonight is our safety, weather, and performance guidelines that come from the UIL and that we've also developed here in Tomball ISD. That will impact all athletic teams at each high school: marching band, color guard, dance, drill team, cheerleading, and ROTC. We're going to share some weather-related accommodations and the impact on our student preparation. So we've talked about before, and you've heard these facts and figures, but they're definitely worth repeating again, the impact of our co-curricular activities on our students. Our students don't just come to school for math and science and social studies. They come for the activities that they belong to and the things that get them excited about coming to school each day. So we have 11,784 total athletes, ROTC students, and fine arts students at the secondary level. We know that they perform better academically, behaviorally, and they also have higher attendance rates. Some huge academic and athletic achievements that we've had in the last few years, Tomball High School and Tomball Memorial High School have been named the National Football Foundation 6A Academic Excellence State Champions. Our Tomball baseball team were the 6A state champions last year, and 145 Tomball ISD senior athletes have been named to the 23-24 Texas High School Coaches Association Academic All-State teams. In fine arts, we're recognized statewide, nationally. We've got the Texas Art Education Association District of Distinction Award, as well as the National Association for Music Merchants Best Communities for Music Education Award. We have over 7,000 secondary students in the fine arts programs across the district, and about 1,500 of them are in activities that require outside rehearsal. They routinely earn Division I ratings. We're right in the middle of UIL season right now. We've not gotten a whole lot of anything other than Division I. State level honors and national recognition. And again, along with our athletics programs, fine arts programs promote leadership, collaboration, perseverance, and school community spirit. So I'm going to turn it over to Coach Flanagan to talk to us about our meeting, how we meet the UIL safety and health guidelines here in Tomball ISD.
So in 2023, the UIL came up with they approved the wet bulb globe temperature as the recommended forecast measurement for the monitoring environmental conditions and so forth, which was a drastic change from what we had been using in the past. And so with that, there were 3 different zones, basically, if you will, that were set up for different areas of the state that would be able to use as far as different temperatures and so forth, and which we'll look at in just a second. We're in the 3rd zone of that. But originally, as they made this recommendation, it's a pilot program, and so it was presented by the UIL as a recommendation. In reviewing that, as we looked at that recommendation, originally we did not, we kept with our past guidelines that we were using, but after speaking to the director of the UIL, he emphasized that he had done a lot of research and that his intent was that this would be a mandate in the future. Currently, it's a recommendation, as I said, as a pilot program to give everyone a chance to work out all the kinks and all of the things that would need to go with that, because there's a lot of things that have to go with that when you implement it. So some of the things are, obviously, when the practices must pause for different phases in the heat process, different levels and so forth, all the way up to from pausing and to be able to have different levels of breaks during the practice, all the way up to no practice at all for the athletes. So schools have to ensure the rapid access cooling and hydration shelter. So that piece right there, in speaking with our athletic trainers, is a huge piece, because basically anytime you're at 80 degrees, it's not really 80 degrees, but 80 on the wet bulb globe temperature scale, then you have to provide that rapid access cooling area, which is a tent, and then also access to ice that can cool them off. So we're talking about, everyone thinks of football, but we're not just talking about football. So in speaking with our trainers, if you take the fall, for example, we're talking about obviously all the football kids, having all of the ice and the tents and all those set up for those athletes. But you're also talking about tennis, having the same thing set up at tennis. During the athletic period, you're talking about for the track teams that are on the field, having another set of tents and so forth that are put up. Baseball practices in the afternoon, their athletic period, 7th period, so they have the same thing. You have softball going on at the same time. You have soccer teams going on at the same time. So our athletic trainers are stretched very thin. Just setting up all of these different equipments and all the different cooling zones, rapid cooling zones they have to every single day for a big part of that fall semester, and then later in the spring as well. So there's a lot of things that go with that. Tomball ISD really does lack the space to allow safe, consistent rehearsals year-round with weather conditions, primarily the heat, somewhat in the cold, and then also we also have some of the lightning and other weather conditions that can be very dangerous as well. Does this work?
I can use this guy.
Oh, okay, thank you. And I believe y'all have all seen this before. This is the wet bulb globe temperature activity guidelines. That is the recommendation by the UIL. We're class 3, which is the lower half. One thing I think is really interesting in that, as they came through, and this is part of the discussion I had with the UIL director, was many areas up California all the way up into Oregon also are in the same class as we are. And so, yes, exactly. And so we know the temperatures here, the humidities here and so forth are a little bit different than some of those other areas. And so that puts us at the top of this very easily as far as these recommendations. We spend most of our time in that 90.1 to 92 range when we're talking about August, September, October. We spend a lot of time in those ranges right there. So just a quick refresher on this. We have to have the cooling zones anytime we're in that 80 degree range. We have the cooling zones that are set up. We also have, when we're 82 to 86, you can see any prolonged exercise, we have to have a minimum of 4-minute breaks, 3 of those during that time. Then we go on the next one, 87 to 90. You can see that bumps up a little bit. We have 4 breaks that are 4 minutes each. And then the red area, 90.1 to 92, which is, again, we spend a lot of time there as well as the next section. But in that section, we can only practice for 1 hour outdoors, and there's a minimum of 20 minutes of rest breaks that are spread out through there. So really our kids are getting 40 minutes of practice during those times. And then when you get to the next area, 92 and above, there can be no practice. And I think one of the important parts of this, if you take a sport, for example, football, where we're in those 2 areas from 87 to 90, where they're not in full pads per se, but especially the 90.1 to 92, they're not wearing any protective equipment. And in a contact sport like that, it's very important that your body is acclimated to carrying the pads, the heat conditions that are accelerated because of that, and then also because of the contact and stuff, it increases your chance of injury when you don't get to practice in those situations.
Quick question, Coach, I'm sorry. But when you're talking about those tents that are being set up, that's not just for football and tennis and all those, that's including like band, trainers have to set up for band and
absolutely
stuff like that as well?
Yes, that's all of our outdoor activities.
That would include the marching band, the drill teams, cheerleading, and also ROTC.
And those have to be separate, they can't share, they're not sharing those cooling tents with football, tennis, or they have to have their own separate cooling tents as well?
Yeah, because of the spacing and the facilities and so forth, the band is practicing in a different area. So you can't transport the athletes back to the training room per se, or a different area for those cooling areas. It's got to be accessible immediately at the site. So we have them set up in different locations that are nearby.
Is this the cooling zone? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, the cooling tents.
Can you describe that, the cooling tents?
Yeah, the cooling tent, basically it's just a almost portable tent, to get them out of the sun. And then also we have to have some way to bring core temperature down if that's in need. So we have to have ice available. Our trainers use, I'm not sure of the exact technical term, but I would say it's like a cocoon is what they kind of call it, where we have those available. Basically, they can ice down that bag, put the student in that bag, and put ice around them and cool them down. But requires a lot of ice in addition to the tents. And then to keep that ice from melting during that period of time is also a considerable concern as well. I don't know if y'all do anything different than that or the same deal. Yeah, so just some background again. In 2024 alone, as you can see, we had 167 days that were weather impacted, with the majority of those being heat, obviously in this area. Frequent high heat, lightning storms, heavy rain impact student activities almost on a weekly basis, certainly in the early part of fall and then in the spring as well. We've had some days even in February that have fallen under some of the cooling zone areas that we have to have. Many times our athletes have to cancel practice, cancel events and so forth that they've prepared for, and they've worked extremely hard. And as Paulette said earlier, a lot of those athletes, that is the reason they come to school and perform much higher than they normally would. And so it does impact them to a great extent when they have to miss those things. Students, coaches, directors, we're having to monitor. We're also having to do a lot of things, putting our coaches in a situation where we have to monitor some things that they are trained in a lot of different areas, but it's very difficult, as you can imagine, if you're trying to monitor hundreds of athletes at one time and determine not only the stuff you're trying to teach them, but also their conditions as far as their for safety purposes, for heat and so forth like that too. So it does put our coaches in a situation as well as our athletes. This, again, is some information that you've been given before, but it just kind of breaks down. In 2024, this information was given by our athletic trainers as far as the number of days and the reasons that we had to use some of these things. Again, the big one, as you can see, 96 days were attributed to heat that we had to impact practices or game times and so forth. The rapid cooling zone next to that says 59 days. That's actually is more. It should actually be the number of those. Those are the days that we didn't have heat restrictions necessarily. So that number would be combined, actually, the 96 and 59. So what are we talking about there? 155 days that the rapid cooling zone had to be implemented for our athletes. And then we have some days for storms, cold, and so forth. So the total number of days, 167. Next, this chart, again, is more information that you've seen in the past, but it just kind of goes through some of those things as far as breaking down the different months, and you can see some of the times. Again, we got one day in February that we had the rapid cooling zone that had to be available for our athletes, as well as one day in December. Again, some of those days, August, July, the rapid cooling zone days, those are the days that did not fall under the heat precautions, but we also had to have that rapid cooling zone. So, and many of our sports compete all year. So cross country, track, tennis, there is no start and end date set forth by the UIL, so they can compete 12 months out of the year. So they do train in June and July during some of these hot times, so we have to have those things available for them as well during that time. Last, in collaboration with our athletic trainers and coaches and administration, we talked about developing the Tomball ISD weather procedures for outdoor athletics. Based on the UIL recommendations. This is basically mirrors or mimics basically the UIL recommendations for our sports and our athletes. The heat index is what we used to use. It's really not 100% compatible with the wet bulb globe temperatures, but these are basic numbers right there. But we do go by the wet bulb, not by the heat index, as well as these. But these kind of go back through some of the things that we do as far as the water policy, our breaks, practice times, or lack of practice times throughout the year. Again, these are our cold, also includes some of our cold, wind chill factors and so forth. Not as big of an issue, but we do hit those areas some, especially in our sports like soccer, for example. Early season baseball, early season softball definitely are affected in those areas, and early season track as well. So before I turn it back to Paulette, lastly, just some things that we do athletically. Tomball High School football team this year started practice at 5 a.m. When they start practice at 5 a.m., the rule is you're on the field ready to start practice at 5 a.m., not warming up or anything else. You're starting at 5. So we've got parents having to get up much, much earlier to be able to get their students there. Obviously, we know the effects of lack of sleep on academic performance. And so there are a lot of them that are having a hard time with that. Our athletic trainers arrive at least 30 minutes prior to the time that our athletes would arrive. So our athletic trainers are arriving at least 4:30 during that time. The freshmen practice at 5:30. Cross country, those athletes are also practicing before 6 o'clock, as well as some of our other sports as well that are showing up early to practice. Changing times is a weekly occurrence as far as makes it very difficult on parents as far as not knowing when to pick their kid up because we're having to alter practice times and so forth. Even Friday night games, many of you know, okay, what time are we starting the game this week? Well, it's a game time decision. We're waiting till the week of. Do we leave it at 7? Do we back it up? We've got other districts that have different policies, so they're not wanting to play sub-varsity games at 4:30. They're wanting to do it later, and so there's a lot of different issues in there that are affected in that as well.
To echo what Kevin said, with fine arts, we're also practicing very early in the morning, and I would imagine that if you're in the neighborhood that's around one of the high schools and the marching band starts it up before the sun rises, that could be a little interesting for you. But yes, so we're doing a lot of the same things, and I wanted to thank Coach Flanagan and his department. What we have done in fine arts is just adopt the policies that they're going by, and then his athletic trainers helped all of our band directors and dance teachers to make sure that they understood how to use the rapid cooling zones. If you've ever been to a Tomball High School band practice, they practice in the parking lot behind the stadium, and their band hall is over at the building. And so having to get all that equipment, including the ice and the cocoon over to their band practice field is quite a haul, and in addition to all the instruments that they're taking over there. So we did want to talk about we talk about regular rehearsals and regular practices, but we do have one that's very special in Tomball ISD that almost got messed up this year. That's for the patriotic game. And so because we've got 800 students at the patriotic game that perform, we get one shot to put it together, and it's the morning of the patriotic game because we can't pull all those students out several times in order to get them all together just because there's just so many and everybody's so busy. So we have one shot, and we usually do it right at 9 o'clock the morning of patriotic show. And by 10:30 that day, this year in 2024, we were already at the red zone, and we had to chill. We had to put them in the shade and start eating our pizza early. And so luckily we had gotten everything we needed to done, but we did have to kind of wing it on the flag. When the flag comes out, that was a hope and a prayer, but it all worked out very well. So just knowing that, if the weather were to not cooperate with us on the morning of patriotic show, we might not have one. It's kind of a scary thought. So to conclude, we are just proud to represent our community, and we're going to continue to do so. We're also going to take care of our kids and make sure that they are safe. So thank you for supporting our students and giving them every opportunity to thrive. And we will continue to do that and be awesome and lead into the future. Thank you.
First of all, thanks for making this more real for me. We visited on this subject a few times, but the more that we're exposed to it, the better understanding. One of the questions I have is, how is the word disseminated on a daily basis within Tomball ISD, that's compliant with, this? Could you just talk about our communications and our awareness?
Yes.
And then where's the logbook kept and just all of that? Could you give us a little more color around that?
Absolutely. We have a wonderful program. It's called the Periweather app, and it's got wet bulb globe monitors. We have them at both high schools. We also have one at the event center, the big stadium. And then also, if you're on that Periweather app, wherever you're at, it'll pick up the closest sensor around you. So like if I'm at my house, the one at Klein Oak pops up. So what that does is it measures your lightning, it measures the wet bulb globe, measures anything that might cause an issue and a disruption. And when it gets above our threshold, we can program it for our policy thresholds, and when it gets above it, it sends a push notification out to everybody who has a subscription to it. And so what we do is we make sure that our directors, coaches, anybody who would be in charge of working with the kids and knowing when it is time to practice and when it's not, get that notification, as well as we as directors, so we can check to make sure that they know what's going on. And it blows up a lot.
And there's an opportunity, we're keeping a record of all of that, okay.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
And that's maintained in the AD's office, in your office?
Is that your office?
Where's our repository of all that?
So the athletic trainers keep track of some of the information that we've got here as far as the total number of days missed.
Okay.
But you can actually go on Periweather and you can check out past information. So you can pull up 10 a.m. a year ago, and it has all that as well.
Okay, I appreciate you sharing that. I think you had said 167 days have been impacted in some way. There was a point you made that I had not thought of as much, but this additional burden, concern that coaches or the fine arts department leaders have, and that's the monitoring of hundreds of students at one time. I don't know that I've fully grasped it. It makes total sense, but as we've talked about, wet bulb and compliance and all that, just this idea of, I don't know how, a lifeguard already at a pool is already a challenging activity, but to kind of maintain that certainly is a challenge and a concern. A concern I've always had also is just this early morning rise and the lack of sleep. We've had folks that have shown up to this board meeting concerned about sleep, especially at the high school level, and this definitely is a concern. 4:30, 5 in the morning, and Coach and Paulette, you've always done a good job of highlighting the academic success of these kiddos. They're not, shutting it down at 8 o'clock at night, right? They're studying, they're continuing to put in the time. So those are the things that have always concerned me. And so I appreciate you making this more real for me. And as I think about Proposition D. It's grown on me over time. Certainly, we had it on the ballot the last election, but this continues to reinforce the need for safety and security. And I'll finish with this. Within this UIL document, I just printed it off, the UIL heat stress and athletic participation recommended. It uses the word recommended 14 times. It uses the word recommended 14 times. And for me, this idea of losing a student in any way, shape, or form, I've quickly gotten to this is a requirement. And I recognize that where they are in their journey to make this required, but I like the fact that Tomball ISD has leaned in here, and we have made this a requirement for the safety and concern that, we want these processes and procedures in place. While it uses the word recommended, this is a requirement in my view, and so I appreciate where we are in this. And I really hope, for the sake of Texas UIL and the safety of our students, this becomes a statewide requirement soon.
Well, Michael, to that point, I think UIL, since this was on the ballot 4 years ago, it's far more stringent now, their guidelines and recommendations, than it even was 4 years ago when we first put these multipurpose centers on the ballot. That this isn't something that Tomball's making up. We're trying to play within the rules that UIL is setting forth, not just for our district, but the whole state of Texas. And it sounds like California and all across the United States. Did I understand that correctly, that with us being in that same region as?
Yeah, I think that the map is based on their studies they did studies with the military, they did some studies with different universities and so forth, is where they drew these numbers from, and the maps and so forth is where he indicated that they got those numbers and the different zones from.
You mentioned Klein. Our districts we're competing against in our district, Klein and Magnolia, are they adhering to the recommendations as well?
I can speak for fine arts. Yes, we've been talking a lot in our Houston area music administrators group about those UIL recommendations, and almost everyone, at least in the fine arts side of things, is abiding by those regulations.
It really is a matter of student safety, so of course we're very concerned with that, as Dr. Pratt mentioned, wanting to make sure that every student is safe.
Absolutely. I believe they are. I don't know that Klein has adopted the wet bulb globe temperature. They may still be using the heat index, but they do have numbers that they also try to do that, kind of like we used to do, so forth. So in some form or fashion, I can't speak to whether they're actually, to the extent that we are, following the direct UIL recommendation.
Any additional questions? Thanks to both of you for the presentation. We appreciate your clarity. Okay, that completes the third report for this evening. We have no public comments tonight on agenda items, and so I would like to proceed to review of the business agenda for April 15th, 2025. I'd like to have a conversation with you, board, about a few items, first being a consent agenda item where this request is only one donation for $6,703.67 from Creekview Elementary PTO to Creekview Elementary School. That's the only request there on a donation. The rest of the items are items that you are very familiar with under consent agenda. So as we continue our conversation, I'd like to move into considered agenda. The first item is an annual request that you are very familiar with, those of you that have been on the board for some time. The rest of you, this is a request every year to approve the in this case 25-26 instructional materials allotment, otherwise known as IMA and TEACS certification, and that's goal 9. Item B is to approve E-rate eligible additions to the district-wide fiber optic network for Tomball West High School, and we wanted for you to understand that this is covering 8 years of maintenance and support for the amount listed of $397,440 using bond 2021 and local funds.
So let's step into that a little bit more.
Yes, sir.
So today, West Intermediate, West Elementary we've run district-wide fiber optic network to that campus already.
Correct.
On funds we've already approved in the past.
Yes, sir.
For West Intermediate, we have run the fiber optic network to that campus already?
Yes, we are completing that.
It's in the process?
Correct.
When that opens, so it's not in this funding here?
Not in this request.
Okay.
This is for West to approve the E-rate eligible additions for just the high school. And this is to prevent, in the event that there is an issue, there is another avenue. Am I correct, Jason? So that in case something were to happen, it's kind of another secure avenue to ensure overall safety of this at the West complex.
Okay, so let me see if I can play that back. In addition to needing to run a fiber optic network to Tomball West to get that going,
Yes, sir.
this also creates redundancy to that resiliency. Thank you, Mark.
There you go. Like that term.
To that entire complex.
That is absolutely correct. Thank
Okay.
you, Mark.
Okay. So I think for those having seen this item before, the district in the past has run fiber optic network to all of our campuses. And so this one is a continuation of that. But then two, this creates resiliency or redundancy for that complex, of which the way our network is designed, we have two main locations, and one acts as the primary, and then the other acts as the secondary for resiliency and redundancy. And we're just connecting all of this up with the last campus right now being Tomball West with this agenda item.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Mark, Tina, any other thoughts on that? Is that kind of making sense?
It's just that if one section goes down, this is another path, so it stays up. We don't lose service at other campuses, correct? Am I understanding that correct?
Correct.
In simple layman, non-technology person's terms.
Yeah, my understanding is it's an additional run that allows us, basically we could have a loop all the way around. If one side goes down, the other side's still up, and it provides that remote location with service hopefully all of the time. Is that correct?
Thank you, Dr. Z.
What is E-rate eligible? What does that mean?
It's basically like eligibility for a refund for the district to receive dollars back. Is that the best way to describe it, Jason? Yeah. Okay, item C is also to approve E-rate eligible purchase of district internet firewall replacement, including 5 years of maintenance, so you understand this cost is for 5 years, and support from MGT in the amount of $818,344.20, also using bond 2021 funds. Item D is to approve the purchase of 60 iPads for fine arts in the amount of $33,117 using bonds 2021 funds.
Martha, do we know what's?
It is actually 30 and 30 at each of the high schools. Am I correct? See, I read my backup data. All right, E, approve the employment of professional personnel to work under the various contracts listed from probationary, 1 year term, dual, 1 year contract, multi-year term, extension of multi-year contracts for the principal and teachers.
Hey, Martha. So last couple months, we have approved different professional personnel. How is this different than agenda items that we've approved in the last couple months? Because I believe principals and teachers were
Yes.
already approved.
Dr. Schindewolf?
So the principal is our new hire that you met tonight, so her contract was done at a different pace, and the other teachers are teachers who were finalizing their certification, which we hold to a high standard here. We don't award the contract if they haven't done that. And so those teachers completed that and also had a transfer to another campus that we finalized, and so we ran their contracts in this second run.
Thank you.
Item F is to approve a 3-year agreement with Lincoln Financial Group to provide employee or employer-paid life insurance, voluntary employee life insurance, and dental coverage for Tomball ISD employees effective September 1, 2025 through August 31st, 2028.
So Dr. Zian, looking at some of the backup information, the benefits that Lincoln Financial Group are providing are actually greater than maybe what was the lowest cost bidder. Can you talk a little bit about the recommendation here of why we would deviate from a low cost versus the benefit of these, the additional benefits?
Yes, sir. I met with staff to review this because in many cases, but not all, we will go with the lowest bid. In this case, when we looked at the lowest bid, it had significantly fewer options for our employees to be able to go for services, and that was a concern. So in this case, this is the second lowest by not much difference, but it provides an exceptional higher amount of service providers, which we felt was much better of an opportunity for our staff. And so again, wanting to award this 3-year contract to Lincoln Financial Group based on the vast array of services that individuals they can go to for the services that they need. And then the last item is something that you are familiar with, unfortunately, when we have individuals that, for various reasons, choose not to complete their contract and leave the district without an area. And I want people to understand that we look at each and every individual request. If it's an individual leaving our community with a spouse, if they are ill and provide documentation, some type of life change, we definitely want to work with them. But there are individuals who sometimes do not provide documentation or do not have a qualifying reason, such as I'm leaving education, or I no longer want to work in this particular campus, or something such as that. And so we do have 4 individuals at this point, unfortunately, that have left their positions: Natalie Evans, Sean Lugbauer, Amber Blake, and Travis Lancaster. It is recommended that the Board of Education render a finding under the Texas Education Code TEC section listed that good cause did not exist as required by the TEC sections listed for the following educators that I just named. That concludes the meeting agenda for tomorrow evening.
Martha, I'm just going to prelude, so let's come back to that for a second.
Yes, sir.
So the parameters that we as board members, as a Board of Trustees, getting specific, there are 4 good causes when an educator is reported to have abandoned a contract. I think you covered these, but serious illness or health condition.
Correct.
Relocation to a new city as a result of change in the educator's spouse's employer.
Correct.
Significant change in the educator's family needs.
Perhaps staying home with an elderly parent or a child that's suddenly sick or something. It may not be the individual, but it may be somebody they're in the care of, they're caring for, rather.
An educator's reasonable belief that the educator had written permission from the school district administration to resign.
Correct.
So on all 4 of these cases, none of those 4 apply.
Correct.
Okay.
Well, there was one individual that stated medical, but could not or did not provide any medical proof of that. And that concludes the review of the agenda for tomorrow evening's meeting.
Thank you, Dr. Z.
Thank you.
I'll pause here for another second. Any other questions for the superintendent on the consent agenda or the considered agenda? Okay, if nothing else, at this point, I think we have completed the agenda that we had set out for this evening, and so I'd like to move into board comments. And so if any board members have comments, now would be a great time. Please do ensure high-level encouraging or congratulatory remarks. I'm sorry all of our principals and staff have left, but I like your decision to let them go based upon the late hour that it is. So, board comments.
All right, I'd like to start. It was mentioned earlier that some of us were in Austin last Thursday talking to our legislators, and we were basically advocating for our students trying to get what we can and let them understand what our position is. And we were joined by several community members, parents, and I would just like to say they did an excellent job talking with our legislators. And it was really nice to see them working really hard and telling their stories. And I think they had some impact. And I'd just like to reach out to Beth Eisenhagen, Lori Adamczyk, Megan Sandschult, and Charlotte Lampe. They showed up there and did an excellent job. I just appreciate it.
Thank you for that, Mark. And also kudos to the board members that also take time off of your jobs, your day jobs, to be with us and to join our community out there. I think it makes a big difference to see staff, board, and community, parents, otherwise locked arms in there talking about what we feel is important for the future of Texas public education. So thank you to all of our board members that were able to participate.
I'll share with the board, I attended the State of the Arts presentation. Although Ms. Tomlinson just stepped out, I was going to thank her for a well-organized tour. Of course, I'm very familiar with the fine arts facilities at Tomball High School. I enjoyed getting to see all of that at Tomball Memorial. She had arranged for fine arts students to take parent groups, tours through all the different rooms, and so that was really, I got to get on the stage even for a moment, and it was really well done and not well attended enough for how well done it was. I wonder if the name State of the Arts maybe wasn't totally recognizable to everybody, but I hope we do it again next year and maybe call it just Info Night or something, because it was really informative and a great opportunity for parents to know what opportunities are available and, all about the different programs that we offer at all the different schools. So that was a nice presentation.
Thank you.
I just want to highlight Challenge Day. It was an amazing event. Seeing all the kids come out and participate. I had quite some fun watching them run the 100-yard dash. We had some real fast kids, but no, it was great seeing the faculty also working with those individuals, and then just the love and the unity that I seen among the students, faculty, staff, and parents out there cheering them on. It was just an amazing event. So.
It is always one of the favorite days in the district, for sure.
I have a couple. Boardwalks. I can't remember if we already met, but I don't think we discussed it. So boardwalks.
Yeah, I don't remember.
So thank you to you and Dr. Schindewolf and the team that put together a great agenda. Keep me honest here, but we started the day at Tomball Junior High School, and we got to see the awesome choir before they stepped out to depart for a competition. I heard they did very well.
They did.
After that. And then we proceeded to, was it Tomball High School?
Yes, the new area.
So the new CTE program and the facility where we have a whole bunch of new capabilities from welding to vet tech. What an impressive facility, and it was great to get to talk to not only the teachers but some of the students on what they're doing in that building.
It's on 2021 dollars at work. That was
fantastic.
Exciting to see that in action.
It was great. And then certainly the highlights of our tour at Tomball Junior High School. Tomball L. Loved and we talked about this a little bit, the robotics program that those students are engaged in. And then the ancillary services tour I thought was fantastic. Those folks that work in that department are kind of the wizards behind the curtain, supporting the variety of buildings and structures and all the equipment that we've got inside of them. It's impressive. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Please continue to introduce us to departments that we may not see on a frequent basis. And so thank you for taking us there, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the last thing, Saturday I witnessed a community event. You know how I'm big on community events, right?
Yes.
That was 1,200, 1,300, 1,500. It was a lot of
A
people.
lot of people.
And so it created a nice environment. I think the weather was unbelievable, so great job dialing up the great weather.
Thank you.
And it was overall a warm and pleasant feel. And so I hope that it benefits the Tomball Moves program greatly. But I think it's a fantastic community event at a great community site. So thanks for doing that.
Very exciting. Thank you. We had some runners and walkers from the board as well. Very, very excited to see that many community members come out and support our annual superintendent fun run or fun walk.
And to add to that, Michael, that also supports the Ed Foundation. So thank you to all of the sponsors. I know community members and then some of our vendors sponsored that, which is so nice because they don't have to give back to us, but it's nice that they do because that money then goes straight back to the students and across Tomball ISD.
Okay, if no other board comments, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lewandowski, seconded by Mr. White. I heard him
Sounds
first.
fine.
And so with that, we will now adjourn the meeting at 9:02 p.m.
Done.
One of our earlier nights.
I know.